Hi, this is Gary with MACMOST.com. Let's take a look at the function keys at the top of your Mac's keyboard. So your Mac's keyboard comes with a row at the top that's known as the function keys. And these function keys serve not one but two different purposes depending upon how you're holding down another key on the keyboard. The functions are actually shown right on the key. So you've got these symbols there that just have the letter F and then a number like F1, F2, and F3. When you're using the keys to generate these characters, they are known as F keys. And these are special, basically invisible characters. There's nothing that's typed by them. But they do actually send a signal to your Mac, and that can be used for keyboard shortcuts. In addition to that, the symbols at the top of these keys indicate they can also be used for special features. For instance, they can be used to change the screen brightness or raise or lower the volume. Now, which function these keys perform depends on this other key at the bottom left corner of your Mac's keyboard. All modern Mac keyboards put it right here at the bottom left corner. This key is known as the globe key or the FN key. In fact, notice here on this keyboard, the most popular one sold with iMacs, Mac Minis, and Mac Studios, that it just has a globe symbol on it. However, if you look at some other Macs, like the keyboard on the current MacBook Pros, you'll see that it has both a globe symbol and the letters FN on it. Sometimes if you go back long enough to older Macs, you will only see an FN on this key. Or if you buy a third-party keyboard, this key will only have the letter FN on it. If you've got the Pro Mac keyboard, the one with the numeric keypad, you'll still find the FN key at the bottom left corner as long as you have the latest version of this keyboard. Older versions of this keyboard put the key here, which was an odd place for it because it was very hard to press it even though it's something you need to use all the time. So regardless of where the key is on your keyboard, the general idea is when you press and hold this key down, it changes what these function keys do. So for instance, by default, if you don't hold the globe or FN key down and you press one of these function keys, it will send the F1, F2, or F3 signal to your Mac, and you can use that as a keyboard shortcut in different apps. However, if you hold down the globe or FN key, much like you would hold down the Shift key on your keyboard to type an uppercase letter, it will then control your Mac in some way, matching the symbols that are at the top of each key. Now, I said that this is how it works by default. You can change this and switch it to do the opposite. If you go into System Settings and then look for Keyboard on the left, and then once there, look for the Keyboard Shortcuts button. Now, look for Function Keys on the left, and you'll see the single toggle here. This switch changes how this works. It does it the opposite way. So if you were to turn this off, then by default, it will use the keys as those special features keys, like changing the volume. And you would have to hold down the globe or FN key to use them as F1, F2, F3, and so on. If you find these videos valuable, consider joining the more than 3,000 others that support MacMost through Patreon. You get exclusive content, course discounts, and more. You can read about it at MacMost.com/Patreon. Let's take a look at these special functions. F1 and F2 map to screen brightness, lowering or raising screen brightness. And it will do this for any MacBook model, an iMac, and other Macs if you've got a third-party screen that will work with these. It's very possible to buy a third-party screen connected to your Mac and find out that these brightness controls don't affect it at all. That you have to use the screen's separate controls, usually built into the screen itself with buttons underneath and so on, to control the brightness. Sometimes it depends on the screen, sometimes not just the screen, but how you have it connected, like whether you're using DisplayPort to connect to your Mac or HDMI to connect to your Mac. One may work, the other may not. Now you've got these media playback controls here. Play, pause in the middle, and rewind and forward on the left and right. So if you're playing media, like for instance, music in the music app, or perhaps a video in the TV app, you can use these keys to control playback. They'll also work with other apps and often with media that's playing on a web page, like a video on a web page, but not all the time. It depends how the web page is built or the third-party app, whether it accepts the input from these. On the right side, you've got three volume controls. The first one is a mute button. So it'll mute or unmute the audio on your Mac. And then you've got lower and raise volume. And then here in the middle, we've got these keys that simply trigger an action on your Mac to access a feature of your Mac. Without the current Mac keyboards, these will bring up Mission Control, bring up Spotlight, start dictation, or turn on or off Do Not Disturb focus mode. However, if you go to older Mac keyboards, you may find that these keys actually perform something different. You have to look at the symbols on the keys to figure out what they do. And of course, all of these keys may do something completely different or may not work at all if you've got a third-party keyboard connected to your Mac. So one thing all Mac users need to do is decide whether this switch in system settings is turned on or off. If you play a lot of media on your Mac and you find it useful to control media and the volume, then you may want to have this switch off so that these keys can just simply be pressed by themselves to play and pause video and audio, and the volume controls can be used without that globe or FN key at all. However, if you use a lot of apps that use F keys for keyboard shortcuts, like for instance, Photoshop uses a lot of these, then you may want to leave the switch on so that you could press these keys and, for instance, trigger F5 or F8 without having to hold the globe or FN key down at all. Likewise, if you like setting your own custom keyboard shortcuts for things, then these F keys are very handy. You can use them in combination with other modifier keys like Command, Shift, Option, Control. So you've got lots of variety there of different keyboard shortcuts. Like for instance, here I've set Shift, Command, and F3 to trigger the strike through menu item, which is found in Pages, Text Edit, and lots of other apps where you work with text. And I'm able to use an F key and not have to worry about assigning one of the letter keys on my keyboard to this. Having that switch turned on means I don't have to add the FN or globe key to the modifier keys I'm holding down for this to work. But if I had the switch turned off, I would have to have the FN or globe key held down in addition to Shift and Command in order for F3 to trigger strike through. But remember, it's easy to change your mind. This is a setting you can toggle on and off as much as you like. So try it one way and try it the other way and see which one you like. And if months down the road you decide you change your mind, maybe you start using an app that uses lots of F keys, or maybe you start playing a lot of media on your Mac and you may want to just switch it to the other one. It's easy to change, so don't worry too much about getting it right. I mentioned before about the fact that older Pro Mac keyboards have the FN key in an inconvenient location. In addition, some third-party Mac keyboards may have it in an even worse location, or it may be missing entirely. If that's the case, you do have an option here. You go into System Settings and into Keyboard Shortcuts, but this time go to Modifier Keys. You can change how the modifier keys work. And you could take the Caps Lock key and change it from Caps Lock to the globe key. This allows you to have a key or a second key on your keyboard that works just like the globe or FN key. And also note that those special features can be accessed in many different ways besides those keys. For instance, Control Center by default has playback controls, those same three playback controls that you would have on those keys. And it has display brightness and it has sound controls. So most of the functionality of the function keys is available in Control Center. And some of it can be used with other keyboard shortcuts. For instance, Mission Control's default keyboard shortcut is Control and up arrow. Spotlight's default shortcut is Command and Space. And Dictation's default is actually press the globe key twice. You can change all of those in that same place in System Settings we've been looking at. The dictation controls are actually there on the main part of the keyboard settings, whereas Mission Control and Spotlight, those could be set down in the submenu under keyboard shortcuts. In addition, you'll find a Do Not Disturb keyboard shortcut that by default is set to nothing. So you can define that as any key you want. And you could also do the same for display brightness, which is usually set to F14 and F15, which are only available on the Pro keyboards. But you can redefine those as another set of keys and have different keyboard shortcuts for all 4 of those special keys in the function key row. Hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. Want to know about every new MACMOST video each week? Sign up for the absolutely free MACMOST email newsletter at macmost.com/newsletter.